Welcome back, guys, to another video. So today we're gonna be working on a YouTube backend clone using Node.js. So if you're really interested in learning more about backend development, consider subscribing and turn on that notification bell because I'm back and I'll be doing more and more videos on backend development using Node.js, PostgreSQL, and probably Django. Right. So this video will be set out in different parts. As you can see, we have part one whereby we'll have our database design and project setup, whereby we set up a simple server. And the second one, we're dealing with the authentication feature, all this that's here. The third part will be video handling the video, uploading the video, deleting, and what's mostly interesting here is streaming the video, because YouTube handles what? Streams, and it streams videos. And then part four, we'll be having user interaction, whereby we'll be dealing with likes, dislikes, comments, and there's nested comments, right? And also removing comments. And also we'll deal with video performance data, whereby we'll have the views count, the views count by location, and we'll deal with user interaction to channels, whereby you subscribe, unsubscribe, watch later, create playlist. So this is gonna be a banger of a series whereby we'll be dealing with the YouTube backend clone. So if you're interested, consider watching this. Let's get to it. Right. So now let's start with I think this should have been at the top, right? Project setup, and then we design our database. So let's just set up our simple server and then we should get started. Right. So this schema.md, there's really nothing here. Alright, so I can just delete this file. And then what we'll do is let's come here on our terminal. So I'm right here where I have my project, so I can now just npm init. This is how I would start off a simple node project, right? So let's get started. I can just say yes, and then say this is backend clone for YT, right? And then our entry point will be src server.js. And then test command, that should be it. And then author, I can just say junior, right? And then we have that, right? So right now we should have a package.json right there. So right now we need to install some packages that would help us in order to get started with our application, right? So I'll just now npm I, so we'll install express. The next package that express will be used for our server, because we'll be using express as our framework. And then the next thing that we'll need is, let's also install nodemon. So I can say end npm I nodemon, right? And nodemon should be a development dependency. However, I'll come to that. So here, you know that by default node doesn't work with ES6. So all builds that we'll be working with, we need ES6. So once those things are done downloading, because we need, in order for us to use express, we just have to say express is equals to require, and then we'd have to say express, right? So we don't want to work like that, right? We don't want to work like this. We want our project to understand ES6. So what are we going to do here? So let's let's wait for this download to happen. And then for so long, let's just set up something basic that we know that will work, even though we'd have to set this up. So I'll say import express from, and then we'll say express, and then we'll say const server is equals to express that, and then we'll say const port is equals to process.env.port, and then if that doesn't exist, we use 5000. So this question mark is the same thing as me using this pipeline, so it serves the same purpose, right? And then that thing is done installing, and then we'll come to what do we need in order to have this thing running. So we can say server.listen, and we listen at that port number, and then we have that callback so that we can actually print something out when the server starts up. And then I'll say server started on port, and then that, right? So now this won't work currently because we don't have our node project understanding ES6. So what then do we need? We need some few packages. We need Babel in order to help us understand this ES6. So I'll come here and say npmi, and we say add Babel /core, and we say add Babel /node, and add Babel /preset -env. So these are the packages that we need in order to understand the ES6 that we are writing. Right. So now let's come in here and directly within the root directory of our project. So we have this here in the root directory. We'll create a .babel rc file, right? And this .babel rc file is where we write our Babel configuration, right? And then we'll bring in what we call presets. And this preset, what are we gonna use? We're gonna use add Babel /preset -env. So this is the only thing we need. We're gonna keep it basic, and we now need to go to our package.json. When we go to our package.json, what do we need here? Come back here, we need our script, right? So we need our start script. So our start script is the script that we'll be using when deploying this application. So we can say Babel -node, and we say source server.js. And then we need our development script because we don't always want to be refreshing ourselves manually, right? So we need that development script, and then within this development script, what are we going to use? We're going to use node-mon. We say --exec, and we need to use Babel -node, and then we give it the path server.js. Now this should understand our ES6. Hopefully, if we do get errors, it's our job as developers to debug this thing and see how where we are missing, right? But then it should be fine, hopefully. So now let's go to, okay, so we have some few errors here. No repository field. What's happening here? Let's see. Not permitted. Operation not permitted. Why are we getting this? Okay, let's just come. Let's open this. Let's see if is it me that I'm forgetting something. So let's come here. So this shouldn't be that much of a problem. Say npm at Babel /core. I believe I wrote it properly, but then if it's my problem on my end, we'll definitely see that. So it is like that. And let's just npmi at Babel /core. Let's see what happens. Let's see which package is breaking for me. Right. Let me go to my dependencies. None of them were installed. Interesting. So it installs now. npmi at Babel /node. Interesting. Why was it not installing the? Or maybe I had a typo. I don't know. Let me scroll up while that is installing. I probably maybe had a typo. So this thing's not allowing me to scroll because it's still running this thing. So I probably maybe had a typo. Let's see now. Let's have this Babel node installing, because we do need this packages in order to have this running properly with ES6. Right. So let's see, just 1 second. There we go. So I don't know why, or maybe I had a typo, guys. No lie. I don't see any typos. Okay, this is weird. And then we say npmi at Babel /preset -env. Right. And then hopefully now we should be good to go. Looks like everything is working just fine. So now the next thing that we're going to do, because now we have all our packages and our Babel RC folder all set up, what we need to do now is just test run this thing and see if this thing runs just well. So it was weird how it was not working. So now we can just come in here and then npm run dev. Right. So we should see our project running nice and smooth. Right. So let's see, we should see server started on port 5000. So nice. So now we have our project all set up. So now we need to now start with our second part of part 1. So the second part of part 1 is database design, having our models all set up. Right. So now what we're going to do is, in order for us to have that, we'll come in here, npm I mongoose, because that's what we're going to be using. We're going to be using MongoDB. And then I'll come in here and then go to MongoDB, because I don't have a local machine running MongoDB instance. So I'll just use the remote one, I'll quickly spin up a MongoDB. And for those that don't know how to spin up MongoDB, this is the time for you to now get to learn how this is done. Right. So let's go to mongodb.com, and then we'll just want to spin up a new project in MongoDB. So let's see. Right. So now while that is doing its thing, there we go. So I can use login with Google, making everything nice and simple. So let's log in with Google. And what is this thing is taking its sweet time, so just bear with me, guys. So I hopefully Mongoose is even finished downloading or installing, if I meant to say. Right. So while this thing is loading, okay, let's just wait for it. Patience is a virtue. Patience is a virtue. So, but then this will be the series to look out for, guys. We're gonna be doing tons and tons of back-end series, and it's gonna be fire, I tell you. So consider really subscribing and turn on that post notification. Right. So now what we're gonna do is we come here, and then we come here, say create new project, and then when we come there to create new project, we're just gonna give it a nice good name, YouTube Backend Clone, and then we'll take it from there. All right. So let's see how this works out. Let's see how this works out. So we're having some bit of delays here with my networks and everything, I believe. So we'll come in here, say YT backend clone. All right. And then we create the project. So it's really simple. There's nothing really fancy about this. And then now we want to build a database. It's very intuitive. So here we're going to be using the free, should be sufficient for our purpose. Yeah. And then I'll just keep the cloud provider as the same as AWS, should be fine. And then everything, cluster name, let's just keep it as cluster 0, but then you can always click here and then change the cluster name. Right, so while the database is still doing all its things, we've created now our database. So now we can give database access. So we come here, database access, we add a new user. So I'll just say test, let's just say junior, and then auto generate the password, copy that password, and then this will be a temp user, 6 hours should be sufficient. And then make sure that I copy that and then have that. So I'm just going to take this password directly so that I don't lose it. We'll create a .env file. This is where we're going to be storing all our secret keys that we'll be needing for this project. Right. So now the next thing is I come to network access. So for me currently, I'll just allow access from everywhere, but then you can also choose allow add current IP address. So I'll just allow access from everywhere. Right. So now I can just come click here, go back, and then let all these changes happen, and then we'll come back to this to get the connection URL. So now when we get here, we go to our source folder, we create a models folder. Right. So within this models folder, we now want to create a user.model.js file. Right. So this is just a naming conversion that I have, but then you can always just say user.js. Right. It's really not that important to write the way I did write it. So now we come in here, we want to create our schema. So now let's think about it, right? Let's come first, let's import that and then say model, right? So let's think about it. So we have a user, right? A user that can be able to, so we're trying to keep it simple, right? So let's say user schema is equals to new schema that. So now we have a user that is doing, let's say username, right? Just want a username, and this username will be a type of string, and a required is true. So we're gonna say required true, and then if it's not given, what are we gonna say? So this is something that Mongoose has for you, that if it's, we say you can put it in an array, and then the next value within the array is what will say out, the error message that will say out if this thing is not given, which is the username. So we'll say username, say username is required to create account, right? And then we'll give this username as unique, not say unique true, and then say account with this username already exist, right? And then now that should be sufficient for this username. And then we'll want email. Do we want, let's say, just say email, it's fine, which is a type of string, and then required, we'll say true, and then we'll say email is required to create account, and then obviously the email is also unique, right? I'll say true, and then say account with this email already exist, right? And that should be sufficient for my email. And the next thing that we want to do is we need a password, obviously, right? The password, and then we'll say type, and then string, and then required, and then we'll say true, and then say password is required to create account, right? And then the next thing that we need is we're going to give this thing a min length, and the minimum length of the password, let's give it, say 6 or 8. Let's say 6, but then you can always give it something. So those are just constraints to make a strong password, right? So let's just give it 6, right? So now we have username, email, and password for our user. Now let's think further that a user can create videos, right? So remember that if the user is having a channel or anything, then it means that they have videos that they've uploaded, so on and so forth, right? So we can come in here and then say videos, right? So but then this video, how we're gonna handle them is we're gonna use them as a ref. We'll have a schema on its own for videos, and then here we're just gonna reference the IDs of this thing, right? So how we're gonna do this is we're gonna come in here, and why are we doing this? This is what I'll explain after writing this. So we're gonna have an array of type schema dot object object. Am I missing something? Schema dot object. Oh, schema dot types. I mean schema dot types that object ID, right? And the next thing what we do is we say ref, and the ref will be videos, right? So now why do I choose ref over maybe embedding, right? So let's think about this part, because we as a backend developer, we have to think about all these things, right? So you must realize that these videos, a user can have 1,000 videos, right? And this 1,000 videos could be a lot, right? So there are certain instances whereby I don't necessarily, when I'm querying for user, I don't want to have that huge large amount of data being passed around. So I can just have reference of that ID, and that should be good. But then if it was just data that was very small and that won't grow tremendously, and that's when I could have used the embedded approach. And what is the embedded approach? The embedded approach is me having, say, videos, right? And then have an array, say maybe this is a type of array, right? And then this array will be typed, and then videos here, you know? So this would be an embedded approach, and then each and every object is a video on its own. But then in this case, because the data can and will be, if we're looking at this in a YouTube perspective, it will be large amounts of data, right? But then let's also now we'll get to how we will store views. Let me not even jump the gun because that is part of part 3 when we're handling videos, right? So now let's keep this as this. So the next thing, what is it that we need to keep track of with regards to user, right? So a user has what we call subscribers and the people that they're subscribing to, right? So let's say, how are we gonna name this? So we're gonna say subscribers, subscribers, if my spelling is correct, subscribers. So this will be the people. This will be the people that subscribes or subscribed. My spelling here. My subscribed to user channel. Right. So in this document, the subscribers will be the part of whereby if I have a channel, now these are the people that are subscribed to me. Right. So I can just come in here and say this will be should I reference this user? So let's think about it properly, because I just need to know the name of this person. I can just keep it as an array of strings and then have, I don't know, let's just keep it as a reference as well. Currently right now for this one, or let's embed, because this one will never really change or scale. So we'll just use an embedded approach for this one, right? So I can just say, and this will be a type of array, right? And then we'll also think about how we're gonna save this, so to make it consistent, right? So it'll be a type of array, and by default it's an empty array, right? So these are the subscribers. So but then also this user has people that they subscribe to, right? And then how can I say this? I can say user subscribed channels. All right. So those are the channels at which we are subscribed to. If, for example, this is my document, and then it was keeping track of the people that I've subscribed to, and then say default is an array, right? So let's also just comment this out so that we know. And this are the people at no, this are the channels that the document user is subscribed to. Yeah, my spelling here is a bit iffy. So now the next thing that we want to look at is, okay, so we have the video subscribers and a user has playlists, right? So with that said, a user having playlist, we can now come in here and say play list. So do we really have to keep all this here? Let's think about that. Let's think about that properly, because we as backend developers have to think about this. And that, okay, I can just have the playlist as a document on its own, right? And I don't even have to reference it, but then having the playlist of that particular user. So playlist is something that I might not really want to have it within this user schema. I can just keep it like that. And then what else? So playlist will be a document its own. So let's also just write this thing down so to have it on our notes. So playlist, let's create a notes folder. Right. So I can just come here, create a notes folder. Notes.md. Right. So we'll come in here, say here, schema notes. Right. So we say playlist will be a schema on its own, or model on its own. It's a model on its own, and then having user ID to ref, right? So that we know this playlist is for user A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? So this is how we'd approach this, right? We don't have to approach this. We could have written it directly here, so on, like with the videos, right? So now with that said, and also here, we could also take this video out, but then let me just keep it like this, and that should be fine. It shouldn't be a problem, all right? So now with that said, what else do we need to keep track of? Because we need to know that subscribers we've handled and people that I'm subscribing to, the videos, and then obviously the default thing. So I believe this is for the user schema. This is everything we need, right? So now we can come back here. Let me just bring this back. So now we can come back here, open this up, and then now we need to create this video schema, right? So now let's hold on a bit with the video and the playlist because we haven't reached this part 3. We'll come to yet part 3 and then we see how this video, or let me just do it right now, right? So we'll say video.model.js, right? And then I'll say playlist.model.js, right? So now with regards to the video, this is something that we really have to think about quite well and how we have to handle this, right? Because I did some bit of researching and all that, and I might be wrong, or maybe the resource that I use might be wrong. But then how Google, or since we know that YouTube is Google, I might be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But then I highly believe that I'm right, right? So apparently the videos are saved in memory and not within a database. I might be wrong, don't quote me on that, right? So that is something that we will be doing, that the moment we get a video, we're gonna read all those things in memory. So we'll have something like videos, right, whereby we're gonna keep them in memory, and somehow some way we'll find a way in handling these videos and making sure that this video is linked with this one. So hence I'm holding off a bit with regards to this video model so that we think about this properly, and you can comment down below how do you think we should handle that and all that. So now we'll come back here. Now because now we have our user, right? We have our database schema set up, but then now we need to make sure that we now come here for our authentication, and then once we get to the video, this is where now I'm sure both of us, the majority of you guys and me, would have had a solution. Comment down below what you guys recommend with regards to the solution and how we should handle this videos, so that we interlink what we'll be saving here with what is within the model. Let's think about that properly, right? We don't have to rush this thing. There's a job as backend developers to sit down, think, make sure that everything is running smooth, right? So now when I come back here, we have our database all set up. So now I just need to get my connection stream, right? So I can come in here, say connect your application, and then we get this connection stream, right? Or connection URL. So I'll come back here, open that up, and then say Mongo URI equal to, and then have that, right? And then I'll just now come back here, get that, save that, and then paste that there. So right now we have our connection stream should work just fine with no problems. So now we can come back here in our server. Let's now set up that connection so that when our server runs, we automatically connect. I'll come back and say from Mongoose, we now wanna connect, right? And then now once we do that, I can now come in here and then say Mongo DB connection, MongoDB connection, and then we'll open that up like that, and then I can come in here, say const, say Mongo URI. Mongo URI is equals to process.env.mongo URI. So we need a package called .env in order for us to be able to access this .env file. So I'll come back here and say npm i.env. Right. So this is what we need in order to access our environment of variables. So now that shouldn't take that much time, as we can see, and then I can come back here and say import, and then from .env we directly wanna import config, right? I'll say config, and then we invoke that function, right? So now, hence I'm not writing any options for this config, is because I have my env directly within the root directory. But then say for example this env was not in the root directory. That's where now we'd have to come in here and define certain few things. So but then making our life easy, we put it in the root directory. Right. So now with that said, I can come in here, say connect, and then I give my Mongo URI, and then give this callback, which will take in an error if there is any error, and we want to handle that with say if error. We want to see that we return a console.log of that error. Right. And then now with that said, I can now just console.log that connection to MongoDB was successful. Right. So now this should work. Let's test this thing out. I can come here, say npm run dev. Let's see if we get my connection working just fine, and then we come to authentication. Right. So let's see if this is working just fine. There we go. So this is working just fine. We have our connection stream working. So I can just close this. So in order for us to work with authentication, we need certain few things. One, we don't want to store password as raw as it is. We want our passwords to be hashed. So what do? We'll install bcrypt, right? And the second thing is we'll be using JWT, which is JSON Web Token. So I'll just also install JSON Web Token, right? So this is what we are going to be using, and we're going to be using all this in a more basic level like JWT. But then as we progress with other backend builds, I'll show you guys how to handle JSON Web Token with also refresh tokens, so on and so forth. But then for now, so to have the whole community on a basic level, understanding these tools, we're going to handle this on a much basic level. So this is what we're going to be using: bcrypt, the JSON Web Token. And in order for us to get our files and everything, or to pass our what we call our request body, we'll be using Formidable. I like using Formidable. Some other people like using the body parser. This is just a preference, right? I love using Formidable. So now we come in here. So now we need to get started with authentication. So how then do we get started with this? So we'll come in here, and then now we'll say controller. We will handle this in an MVC pattern. This is how we're gonna handle this, MVC pattern. And then now I'll come in here. Within that, I create my routes folder. So this is something which we have, and we'll also have a middlewares if we do. So this is the structure of our project. And if we have any utils that we need, this is how we're gonna be handling things. Everything should be structured, guys. Everything should be structured. Now let's come to this controller, whereby we'll say auth.controller.js. Like I said, this is just the naming conversion that I have. You guys don't have to now say auth.controller, but then auth.js, right? So I'm gonna come here, say import from. We need to use Formidable. From Formidable, what do we need? We need this thing called incoming form, right? This is what we're going to be using in order to pass our request. And then now we need also what we call bcrypt. Everyone now say counts bcrypt. From bcrypt, what do I need? I need gensalt and I need hash, right? So these are the things that I will need. And then now, what else do we need? We'll also need compare for logging in, right? So these are the functions we need. And then lastly, what then do I need? I will need import. I'll need .env, and this .env is for us in order to access our secret, so that we can give this JSON Web Token a secret key that only us know. And then now we also import from JSON Web Token. We'll import a verify, and I think it's sign, right? So these are the things, or the modules or packages that we were using, functions, whatever that we'd call it. And then now what then do we need? We now need to start with this controller. So I love having my controller as class based. I'll say class auth controller, right? So with this auth controller, what then do we do now? We now need to create methods that are required. And what are these methods that are required? We come in here to our task MD. So our auth feature will have sign up, sign in, and forget password. So these are the things that we need. So we need sign up method, we need sign in method, and finally we need forgot password. Say not one word, forgot password method, right? So these are the three methods or functions that we're gonna have for our authentication controller. So let's start with the sign up. I'll just say sign up, which will take in a request and a response, right? So now with that said, we need to instantiate this formidable instance. We'll say new form, and we have that like that. So now this new form, what then do we do? Say form dot pass. What then do we pass? We first pass, give the argument as the request, and then secondly, what then do we give? This is a callback function whereby it will take in an error, fields, and files. So these fields are textual fields, sort of like the username that we're going to be getting, password, and the files, that's what we're talking about, your pictures, media files basically. So now we need to handle this error. We'll say if we do get an error, right, what then do? We then return a response dot status of 500, because this is something which our server just failed to pass this request body, right? And then we send back a message, and with the message saying network error, failed to create account, and then please try again later, right? And then now with that said, we've now handled that error. Now what then we do next is we now say const, we need to extract the fields, because the fields will now be broken down into a nice good object that we can work with. So what then do we expect from this field? So I can just pull up my model quick, right? Bring it here on the side. What then are we expecting from a user? Excuse me. So we expect a username, we expect an email, we expect a password, and what then else do we expect? So those are the only things that we expect: username, email, and password, right? So now with that said, I can now just close this, right? So that's the only thing that I expect, right? So now I can just close that and say fields, right? So this is what we call destructuring, right? So now with that said, I can now come here and say if, so I don't even have to now come say if not username blah 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 blah, because we've already have this model validating all these things. And then what we will do is if we get an error from MongoDB, right, we will now handle that error to send appropriate message. Because say for example, I get an error because username and email was not provided, I don't have to send user email blah blah blah. I can just send all fields that are required. So that's just for us to handle those errors, right? So I can just skip this phase, and what I do now, I can say const salt, because we now first want to hash this password, right? So now we say salt, and then we use that gen salt that we imported from bcrypt, and then this we give it a number of rounds, right? So by default it's 10, and I just love 15 for some odd reason, I don't know. And then now we say const hashed password, and then with this password, what then do? We now say hash, we call in the hash function. We first give it the data that we want to hash, which is password, and then we give it the salt, right? And then we say salt, and now that should hash my password successfully. And then now I can just come in here and say const new account is equals to new. We need to now import this user model, right? So now let's create the model, because we have the schema all set up and not the model. So we now say export const user model is equal to, we use that model function that we imported here, and then now we give it, first we give it the name, and the name will be user, and then the next one is the schema, say user schema, right? So now I can make use of this user model. I can now come in here and say import, and then we say from, go back up once, and then models user.model, right? And then I can come in here, import that. So why I like using this prefix, because I can see directly, okay, this is a model, so this is why I love writing my things like that. And then I can come in here and then say user model, right? And this user model will take in what username. So we'll use the shorthand ES6, we say username, comma, and then we say email, comma. But then with password, I cannot just say password, comma, because I need to save the hashed one. I'll say password is equals to the hashed password, right? And then we say const saved account is equal to new account dot save, right? So now that should have created our what we call our new account. But then it's very important that the moment we save here, we do know that there's a possibility that a user might not have given us, say for example, a minimum length password of 8, so on and so forth, not 8 but then 6. So what then do we want to do here? We want to have a way of handling this error, right? So what we do is, for now we'll say async, right? And then when we save this thing, right, this data, we'll come in here and then we'll try catch, and if there is any error, right, so we'll try catch, and then we new account.save, and then we await the whole saving process, right? And if there is no error within this try, then I return a response.status of 201, which says created, and then .json, and then say account created successfully, right? So now that account has been created successfully. What then do we do if there's an error? For now, let's just return a response.status of so here this way now it cannot be, we don't know if it's our problem or the user's problem. So for now we'll handle this error properly, but then for now let's just give it a 500 JSON, and then let's say failed to create account, right? So here there's a tons of possibility that we might be getting this error because one, a user didn't give the appropriate data. So that's where now this status shouldn't be 500, but there should be 400 because it's a bad request. But then there could be an instance whereby our server failed to interact with MongoDB and save the data appropriately. That's where now it is our server problem. That's where we return a status of 500. So, but then this is something that we will handle. So I'll just even comment this out, say to do, and then we'll say handle error correctly, right? So this is something that we will definitely handle. Error handling, it will be a part on its own whereby we handle this errors. Let me just even while at it so that we don't forget, so that we move together. While at it, let's add it maybe as part 6, whereby we dedicate maybe error handling on its own, part 7 I mean, and then we'll say error handling, right? So now we'll just keep it like that for now, and then also console log so that we know ourselves as to what is happening with the error, right? So we can even console log that error for us. So now we have our signing up all done and proper. So now the next thing that we need to do is sign in, right? So let's get it. So now what we do is we say sign in. We're about to take a request, a response. So now with the sign in, what then do we do? Say const form is equals to new incoming form, right? And then this is the same thing as we did there. We say form.pass, and then we say request, and this will take in an error, and we'll take in fields, take in files, right? And then what then we then do with regards to this one, we'll come in here, say if there is an error, we'll return a response.status of 500.json, and then we say to this thing that network error, and then we say failed to create, not failed to create, man, failed to log in, right? So we'll say 500 because our server failed to pass this request body because it's our problem on our hand. We don't know if the user did a problem of not sending the appropriate data, right? So now the next thing that we do is we come in here and say, what is this? Right. So we'll give our user the luxury of either signing up with username or email, any of the two, username, email, and then obviously the password, right? So here I can just say, let's say account, let's just say account, and then here we'll say password, right? So now on this one, we'll say, we'll destructure the fields, and then we'll say, what then we do is, we need to know if this account is an email or password, right? So how then can we do that? Should be easy with JavaScript, right? I'll say const is account email, and then what then we do is we'll say account dot includes, if it includes an @ sign, right? And then we are most safe, because obviously there are some usernames that might have what we call an @ for some odd reason. But then for now, let's just keep it basic. Say for example, we see an @ sign, but then we could have passed in some mini validation or regex to see if this is an email, right? Which we can later do in the future. So, but then for now, let's see if we do find an @ sign, and then we know that this person was trying to log in with an email, right? And then this is where we now say if is account email, and this person is trying to log in with their email. So this is where I'll now say const account is equal to, and then we're trying to query this account based on email. Make sense? So now we'll come in here, say user model dot find one, and then we find one by what? Email, whereby it is that account, right? So now once we find that, what then we do is we check if it's not account, we return a response dot status of 404 because this account does not exist, and then we send a message saying account with this email does not exist, right? So but then if it does exist, what then do we do? If is account email account, oh yeah, I have, let's say user, because I can see this account will clash with this one. So let's say there's the user. So if not user, right, and then what then do we do? And then we know that the user is not found, the user of this email does not exist, right? So now what then we do is, if this check is passed, it means that this is a valid user, and then we need to validate the password. So what then do we do here? We say const is password valid, and then we say we use this function that we've imported here, which is compare. We now say, come here, say compare, and then what then do we compare? We want to compare the password which we got with the saved password, which is user.password, right? And that is the hashed password. So then what we do is we say if not is password valid, and then I just want to throw this person out, say return the response dot status of 400.json. And why are we saying 400? It's a bad request. This person didn't send a valid password. So we can say invalid credentials. Right, I could have said invalid password, so on and so forth, but then I'm trying to be anonymous a bit so that for malicious users, we don't necessarily give out proper error messages, right? So now this is what we can do. So, but then if this check is now passed, that means that this user gave us the correct password. So I now can say return a response.status of 200.json. But then before that, we need to create this token, right? So now this way, now we come in here, and then we say const token is equal to sign. We want to sign this token, and then what then do we give? We give the payload, right? So let's create this payload. So I can just come here, say const token underscore payload is equal to, give it that object. So we'll have the underscore ID so that we know the user, whereby it will be the user dot underscore ID. And then I can give also the email. These are unique identifiers of this thing. I can say user dot email and I can also give maybe the username, right, whereby it will be user.username, right. Hopefully I have all the fields properly. And then now with that said, on this payload, once we sign it, as you can see, we need the payload, we need the secret, and then we need our options. So I can come in here, give the payload as the token underscore payload, and then my secret key. Let's create our super secret key. So this will come in here. Will come in here, and then we'll say cookie underscore secret. And within this cookie underscore secret, we're just gonna write some nice good secret. No one who would ever think of this, guys. So this is what we'll write. So now once that is done, hence we had imported this .env thing, and then we need to also invoke this config, right? Invoke that. So now with that said, what then do we do is we now come in here, and then we say process.env dot cookie underscore secret, and then now we need to give the secret, not the secret, man, the options, which is expires in. So this is for expiration. So for expiration, we'll just give it 365D, which is 365 days, right? So however, now we have created this token, we now send it back. Now the user has been signed in properly, right? So now this should be our signing in. It should work. If it doesn't work, it's our job as developers to debug this thing, right? So now remember, we only handled if account has this, because this means that this person's email. So that means that if this condition is not met, then what then do we do? I can just come right here at the bottom and then say that means that this thing is a, so I can just go through the same process. I can just copy this literally, but then now what then we do is we now have to change the query. That's the only thing, the query, that's the only thing that we need to change. Now how then do we change this query? It means that we need to grab by username, and then we grab the account, and if user does not exist, we return that account with this username does not exist. And then if it passes this check, we compare the password, and then if password does not exist, we say invalid credentials, we create the token, and then we pass this user. So that should be more like it, right? So we're giving our user flexibility to sign in with both email and password, right? So now let's go to forgot password, and then we'll see how this works. So we're just gonna keep it simple as well, this forgot password, that the user will give the email, the password. We keep it simple like that, and then we replace all those things, right? So now we'll just say forgot password, but then as we progress with other builds, we'll add a user verifier, and we'll send an email to them, so on and so forth. So it'll be interesting, but then for now I just want to have the whole community understanding the basics. So now what then we do is we go through the same process, const form as regards to new incoming form. And then what then we do is say form.pass. We want to pass in the request. And another thing that before we continue, you see that I've been querying or working with MongoDB, but then I didn't await its response or wait for this whole thing to this query to finish. So this is where I need to async, and on each and every query we await, and that should be the only query that I have, whereby I check in for the user. And then also, because you must remember that we also need to await for this one, we come in here and then say await, right? So that's basically that. And one more thing, guys, that we'll have a problem with, we'll resolve that in the after finishing this, is when we're working with bcrypt. Bcrypt also is asynchronous. We also have to add await, right? We'll add that. So for now, let's just go with our forgot password, and then we say error fields files, right? And then we handle that error, and then we return a response.status of 500.json, and then we say network error, failed to reset password, right? And then now what then we do is we const, here we expect the email, so let's expect email and password, right? And then we say fields. So now what then we do is, if these things are not given, so we also need to validate this thing. If these things are not given, which is email and and password. If these things are not given, what then do I do? Return a response.status of 400.json, and then we say to this thing, all fields are required to reset password. Right. So now once we've done that, we need to find this user's account. We say const user is equal to user model dot find one, and then we find one based on email, whereby it's that email that we given. Right. So now what then we do is, so should I have done this or should I have just updated right away straight? But then the thing is, I need to hash his password, right? So what we can do is we can say const hashed password is equals to first create the salt. We need that salt most definitely. So const salt is equals to gen salt, and then we say 15, and then we say const hashed password is equals to hash, and when we hash this password, we pass in that password with the salt. But then remember, we're gonna fix this bcrypt things, because bcrypt is asynchronous. We need to await this thing, so we'll go through the sign up, sign in, and forgot pass. But then for now, I'm just keeping everything consistent so that I don't confuse anyone, right? So now, to make this thing efficient, we don't have to query this thing and then check if this thing is blah 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 blah. What then we do is we do this, guys. We try catch, right? And then we say const updated account is equals to, we await, and then we say user model dot find one and update. But then we don't find by ID, we find one and update, because we want to find one by email, which is that email, right? And this is where now we make our query. Right now we want to set, right, the password that we got to, we say set password to the hashed password. This is us now querying this thing properly. So let me just make this thing large so that you see. Alright, so this will be a more efficient way than what I was about to do, whereby we query check if this thing exists, blah 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 blah. So what then we do, because if this email does not exist, it won't do anything, it won't update, we'll just get an error, right? And that error, which is something that we will handle, because it will have a part on its own where we error handling. So now what then we do is we say find one and update by email. We find one, and then we say set the password that we want to set of this account to the hashed password, right? So now if this thing gives an error, it will be right here within this catch, and then we will handle that. So now for now, if we reach here without no errors, let's say return a response.status of 200.json, and then with the message saying password, let's say account password reset was password reset success, right? So now that should be it. And then now here we will still handle, like I said, we'll handle this. We'll say, but then for now let's just say return that of 500.json, and then here we'll say failed to update password, or let's say reset password, failed to reset password, right? So that should be what we have. Now let's go back onto the sign up and everything, so that we see as to what mistakes did I leave out before we get unnecessary errors. So like I said, a bcrypt is something that is very very what we call it's an asynchronous tool, so we need to await. So when we gen salt here, as you can see, if I have on top of this thing's return a prom, this thing will return a promise of a string, right? So that's where now I have to now await, and then also when I hash, I await, right? So this is for the signing up, and then here with MongoDB we've already awaited. That is good. So now we come in here. Or am I wrong with regards to this returning? It does return a promise of a string, so I don't know why this thing is saying that this is not, but then let's see. So now we go to sign in, same thing with regards to MongoDB, we await, that's good. Compare, also we need to await, right? So we come in here, say await this action, and then I come back here, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. I await this interaction or this process, and then scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. We scroll down, gen salt. We await hash, we await. And then make sure that when we're awaiting, this function has an async, because this is where this whole process is happening. But if it was happening on this top level with async outside, right? And then we await, and then we're good to go. If we get any errors, we'll definitely debug these errors, right? So hopefully everyone is following. We kept everything on a much basic level, right? So now I come in here to my route and then say auth.route.js. Right. So now once that is done, what then I do is I now say import, and then we say from express, and then we have the router, right? So now this router that we're using, we want also to import this controller. We want to make use of this controller, so we export this controller, right? So I now say import from, and then we go up, and then controller, we want that auth controller. So you see why I love this. I can now see directly this is a controller, right? Might not be the fanciest thing, but then I just like it like that. So now I can come back here and now say const router is equals to the router that we want. And then we need to set up our new instance for controller. I can now say controller is equals to new auth controller, right? So now let's set up our route. So now say router.post, and then this will be /API/sign up, and then here this will take in a request, right, and a response. So however, we now make use of the controller to handle this sign up, right? And that's where now we throw in the request. Remember the request and response, which is making use of, it's coming from this express callback function. And then we also now say router.post, and then we say /API/sign in, and then we say request response, and then we say controller.sign in, and then pass in that request, pass in that response, right? And then finally router.post, and then /API/ let's say password -reset, and then we'll say request response, and then we throw that to the right controller, right? Do that, right? However, at this password reset, we need to make sure that this user is authenticated. We'll have a middleware that will run, because obviously not a log, you cannot reset the password if you're not a log. You can actually, because you just send in, actually you can if you send in an email password, you don't have to be logged in, right? So you can comment down below if you guys think otherwise and everything, and then we'll see how we work, because this is our project, guys. So now let's take this route to this server, right? Let's expose this route. So now this is where I now say const auth route from, go up once, route auth route, right? And this is where now I bring this thing here, comment that, and then we say here is our server endpoint, right? So this server endpoint will be down here below, say server.use, and what then do we use? We use this auth route, right? So now let's test this API out, and the final thing that we need to do is we need to add CORS. That is for cross resource origin sharing, right? That is CORS. So now let's install this. So it's npm i CORS, which is cross origin resource sharing, right? Let's import that, and this, we come in here, we import CORS from CORS, right? And then what I do is just right above here, this is where all my middlewares will be. So I can now come here, say middlewares, right? So now we bring them down there, and now say server.use, and we want to use cause, right? So these are the things that we need. Now let's test out our server and let's see if this runs smoothly. So npm run dev, right? So hopefully each and everything is working just fine. So we're getting some bit of problems, right? So here it says app.use it requires a middleware function. So why are we getting this error? This is weird. So we have server.use and it says app.use requires a middleware, and that is Babel node, blah 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 blah. Type error. So what is this error from? Okay, so this is weird. This is new for me. Let's see. So why are we picking up this error? Is this error coming because of this? Nope, I doubt. So let's refresh that. It's not coming from that, right? So why are we getting this? Also, let's kill that. Let's see. Right. So we have our server running quite well. So let's see this thing. Why is it getting this thing? So this is where now we bring in Uncle Google, right? Let's bring in that. And then this is how every development phase happens, guys. I'm literally not filtering anything out. This is our project that we're building, right? So let's see why we're getting this error. Right, so we go to Stack Overflow. We see. Right, we don't care about this guy's question. Okay, we do care. But then let's see. So module.export router. Oh, so yeah, I didn't export. So there was just a silly error from my end. Right. This is just a silly error on my end. Because if you come in here and go here, I didn't export this router. So what is it using? So we say export default router. That was just a simple bug on my end. Right. So I can just bring back all my other things. We shouldn't get any problems, I believe now. So if I kill the server, run that, and then we have that. So those silly errors do happen. I know how I overlooked that, but then I did. So now I come back here and be using Thunder Client. Makes life easy. I make requests right in front, not right in front, right inside VS Code. So I can just say HTTP localhost / I believe I'm running on port 5000 API / sign up. Right. So there should be a post request, and then let's just send this a request. So this should be a bad request. We do expect a bad request because we didn't send anything within the body, right? So if I come in here, it says data and salt arguments are required, right? So that is a bad request. Definitely expected. Those are things that we'll handle later, right? So let's come in here to our form body. We'll say username, and then the username, let's say junior, and then why is it not allowing me to add more fields, eh? What's happening with Thunder Client now? Oh, there we go. So now I come in here, say password, and password we need 6. So I can just say 1 2 3 4 5 6, and that should do. And then the next field, let's say the next field is email, and let's say junior@gmail.com. Right. So now this should be all that I need. Let's create this account. So let's sign up. Let's see, this should work. If it doesn't work, we resolve that. So account created successfully. So if we go to our MongoDB, we go to browse collections, we should see our user name, email, fields, everything, right? So let's see. So we go there, and then we have that user, and then we have that. So username junior, email, and then password as hashed password. So we're looking good, right? So let's see if the signing in works. So I can just change this to signing in, and we know already that with the signing in, it takes username, it takes in any of the two, right? But then it should be named as account. So let's see if it works. So I'll just say account, and then that account will be junior. So hopefully it logs me in and sends me my token, right? So let's see, and then I get that token. So it works for checking if there's that at. So let's say junior@gmail.com, right? So I can just say junior at gmail.com. So it should also throw me back another token, if it's still that. So it works properly, signing in with both email and username, right? So we see that our signing in works just fine. No problems, no issues, right? So let's give a wrong password. Let's see. If we give a wrong password, it should say invalid credentials. That's something we expect. Bingo, right? So our signing in works just fine. So now let's try the reset password. I forgot the URL, man. So it should be password dash reset. So I come in here, say password dash reset. So now with this password dash reset, we expect email and password. So let's give an invalid email, and then that should be that. It should give that account with this email does not exist. Whoa, hold on a bit. So now, how is this thing? Oh, I think let's go to our thing. Let's see what's happening. Let's see what's happening here. How did it work? So let's go to forgot password. Let's see how I'm getting the email and password, right? It's true. So, but then how and then did it find my email? Meanwhile, the email is wrong. Interesting. Very, very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. So let's give it an email of ben@gmail.com. Very, very, very interesting. Account password reset success. Very, very interesting. And that we definitely know that this password reset is not working as it should. So now let's come back to this password reset. Let's see what's happening here. So how am I getting this working, right? So let's do it like this. I don't trust this thing. I don't at all. At all. This shouldn't have worked. So what we do is let's change this up a bit, right, to something using callback. So we'll use the same thing. Say user model dot find one and update. We find one by email, right, which is that email we got. Same thing, and then we say $set, and then what are we trying to set? We're trying to set the password, right, to the hashed password, right? However, now we're taking a new is equals to true, so to get the document, and then secondly we're taking a callback, which is the error, right, and the document, right? And then now we say if there is an error, let's return the response.status of 500.json will handle this error, and message is password. Let's say failed to reset password. Say failed to reset password, right? And then let's also mark this as a to do because we need to handle this. It could be our end that the user did give a valid password or a valid email, and a valid password because the password has to be a length of 6 and above. So it could be that this user gave valid information, but then we failed to handle the update. So we'll say to do handle error, right? Also, all other errors will handle, right? So we say failed to reset password, and then if there is this password reset was done successfully, we'll then return a response.status of 200.json, and then message say password reset was successful, right? So let's test this thing up. I don't trust what was happening here. It shouldn't have worked the way it should have worked. I doubt that. So let's see that our server is up and running, and then we go to our new request. We send a ben@gmail.com, and then let's see if we do get this thing working. It surely shouldn't work. How the hell is this thing working, guys? How the hell is this thing working? So now let's come in here, refresh this. Let's refresh that. Let's see what's happening. Let's see what's happening. I might have a huge feeling that, if I'm not mistaken, if MongoDB is not creating a new document, but then it shouldn't, but then I'll be learning something new myself. Let's see, let's refresh this collection, and then let's see what's happening now, because we literally shouldn't work. If we say we don't have a ban in our account, we don't have a ban, literally. So how am I getting this thing to send this thing? So it means that we're doing something wrong. We are definitely doing something wrong, guys. Definitely. Okay, so let's handle it the inefficient way that I wanted to handle it. I still believe it's inefficient, but now I'll say const user is equals to await user model dot find one, and then we find one by email, which is that email, right? And if not user, and then I return a response.status of 400.44.json, and then we say account with this email does not exist, right? So now if the user passes that, it means that account does exist. So that means that I can just come here, say const updated account. So now this should be the way to go. We say user model dot find one and update, and then we update based, we check for that email. So the same query, guys, same query, set, and then we set password to the hashed password, and then we say new is equals to true if you want to return this document. So this is where you add your options of new is equals to true, right? And then if that's it, I can now return a response the status of 200 and .json, and then we say message, and then we say come on, message, and then we say password reset success, right? So now this should be something which should work, right? But then I don't like the mere fact that I'm querying this, we will still querying this and then having to query again. I don't like what I'm doing there. So it's something that we'll have to look into. All right, so let the server start. So the server should refresh. Let's kill it even so that we have a clean server or clean slate. Oh yeah, npm. We say npm. All right, I don't know where that pm came from. So we set that up, and then we have that server running. Let's connect to MongoDB, and then there we go, bingo. Now I can come back here. So let's reset password ben@gmail.com. Let's see. Right. So account with this email does not exist. Right. We good now. But then still, guys, I don't like querying to this database twice. Why not query once and then resolve that error? That's something that will definitely do. So if I come here, say junior, and then give this password as let's say 2 3 4 5 6 7, right? Let's say 3 6, minimum of 6 7 8, right? So now this password reset now should work. I expect this thing to say account password reset success, right? Obviously we won't see it there, but then now we can, how can we test it up is by signing in, right? So if we sign in, we can test it out and see if it worked. So signing in, we need the account as the field and the password. So that's what we need. So I can sign in. I expect the token to be thrown back at me. There we go. So our password reset did work actually fine, but then still guys, I don't like what's happening here. So here we'll make it to do, and then we'll say handle this process efficiently. Hopefully my spelling is right. Hey, hopefully my spelling is right. Efficiently, right? So this is something that we'll handle in the next part of this video. Before we go even to part 2, we will handle that part efficiently. I don't like what I'm doing there. We'll handle that part efficiently, and then we go to video uploading. So if you guys like and are keen to seeing more how to set up a streaming server, so on and so forth, consider liking, subscribing, turn on that notification bell, because I'll be dropping the video of part 3 soon, before you know it. So see you guys in the next video. Bye.